and I am here to tell you a little bit about day one of this walk on the Camino de Santiago. And so, the first thing I want to tell you a little bit about is about this route. So, this route is called the Camino Inglés, which translates to the English way. And that's because pilgrims in the Middle Ages and up until present day, although most pilgrims now are arriving by plane or just walking out their door, back in the Middle Ages, a lot of them would arrive by boat, and they might come from Norway, they might come from Britain, from Ireland, and they were arriving by boat into one of two ports, either A Coruña or Ferrol. And so I started my Camino Inglés today in Ferrol, and that's because if you start in A Coruña, it's less than 100 kilometers, and therefore you can't get your official uh, Compostela, your official I walked the Camino certificate unless you do 100 kilometers. So anyway, I am also here because I'm scoping out this route because I'd like to lead a group on a Camino walk. And so I am kind of doing reconnaissance and seeing if this is the route on which I would like to lead people. And so far, it's looking great. I'm just glancing down at my notes here. So first of all, for Roll, the starting point is the one of the main bases of the Spanish Navy. It's actually the main base on the Atlantic for the Spanish Navy. And so the Camino de Santiago that starts in Ferrol, you're going to see a lot of military presence in the area, not necessarily folks in uniform, but I do have a little bit about that in a little bit. But yeah, you are definitely going to see it is a working port here at Ferrol. And so, also, since it's on the Atlantic, there's tons of seafood. So you'll get some delicious seafood on this Camino de Santiago route for sure. So my plan going forward is to do a live every day that I'm on this Camino. So it will take me 6 days to get from Ferrol to Santiago de Compostela. Today was day one, so I should arrive in Santiago on Saturday. So I'm going to be doing with the exception of Wednesday, I will be doing a Camino, a live, this time every day. On Wednesday, as you may know, I always do a live, and usually I have a guest. And so my Wednesdays are normally at 11 a.m. Eastern time. But every other day this week, it's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So for those of you that are interested in a Camino de Santiago or potentially learning more about this route, that's what I'll be giving you each day. So as I mentioned, this route starts in Ferrol. We'd already talked about how it's a popular Navy base, but another thing to know about Ferrol, it is also the birthplace of Franco, the Spanish dictator for many years. That is not necessarily something that's obviously as heavily publicized, but it is in fact his birthplace. There's also some very interesting artwork in Ferrol because there was an artist who, when this city fell on hard times, like way back in the 80s, he eventually decided back in 2008 to do street art. And there's a whole history behind the specific street art and what it's related to and all of that. So there's a whole walk and you can go around and see all the different street art. There's now over 500 pieces of art on these in this one neighborhood in particular in Ferrol. And then the first weekend of every September, artists come in. Now it's known around the world. And these artists come in and do more of these paintings in this wonderful neighborhood that has now been revived thanks to this urban art project. So Ferrol has definitely a couple things going for it that I really, really enjoyed. The other thing to know about Ferrol is that in addition to being an active Navy port, that it is also, when I arrived yesterday, there was a very old looking ship. It kind of reminded me of the USS Constitution, for those of you that have been there in Boston. And it had all these flags on it, and I wondered what was going on. So people were boarding it. So I went over there, and clearly it was an American ship. There was no security. I actually had my Camino backpack, and I walked around on the boat. But anyway, it was it's a boat from the Argentinian Navy, actually. So the Argentinians, when they're doing training, they bring out this boat and do a world trip. And so they stop in different ports every year. So I got to meet all kinds of young Argentinian men and women who were here They've been here for a few days. They're going to Norway next. They're going to the Netherlands. They're going to Germany. And so you board the boat, and they'll tell you all about their training. It's in addition to being a training mission for them, it's also a kind of goodwill thing for the Argentinian Navy to go and to communicate and be present for in other countries with their navies and things like that. So it's also kind of one of those. I don't want to say PR, but for lack of a better word, there was also a man on board who's part of the Argentinian Tourism Board. So it's also a way to get people interested in going to Argentina. So this is one of the things that I love about doing the Camino de Santiago is that you can show up in these towns and have no idea, like, oh, there's a festival going on, or oh, there's a ship that hasn't been here in 7 years that looks it's actually a three-masted ship. They will sail it under full sail, but it does have backup power as well. So anyway, that was just an interesting thing from yesterday. Uh, where I am staying tonight is a building that the property has some buildings that have their foundations from the 16th century, and basically it fell into disrepair. And in the 1980s, an architect bought it and started redoing it, and it is now a lovely hotel. I am actually on a river here, and it might be hard for you guys to see that, but my room has a balcony overlooking the harbor here. It's not the river, it's the harbor. And so I'm also trying to find lovely places to stay because as I've said, for those of you that joined a little bit late, I'm working on an itinerary to lead a group of people on the Camino de Santiago on one of the routes. And so far this route is looking great. I found some great places to stay, some great places to eat. And as far as the people on the Camino, let's talk about that, because one of the things I love about the Camino are all the different kinds of people that you meet. So far, I met a young woman from Canada who just got her master's, I want to say in Belgium, but I can't remember off the top of my head. She's from Canada, but she has her Italian citizenship. And so therefore she was able to get her master's for much cheaper than she would be in other places. And we bonded over that because I am also an Italian passport holder. So that was pretty cool to talk about the process to become an Italian citizen. Next, I met two young men from Argentina, actually, who had no idea that Navy ship was going to be in this port. So they were just delighted that they saw the ship, and then they saw the big Argentinian flag. But they actually live in Barcelona. For those of you that don't know, there are a lot of Argentinians who do live here in Spain. And these gentlemen, one of them has been here just over a year, one of them for less. And so they decided to start to do the Camino Inglés, the route that I did, that I'm starting today. And they decided to do that route because the Camino Frances and the Camino Portuguese, about 80% of the people that do a Camino de Santiago are on those routes. And so they decided that they wanted to do one of the less popular routes. And so the Inglés is, I want to say, the third or fourth most popular Camino de Santiago route. But when we say that, again, 80% of people are doing the Camino Portuguese or the Camino Frances. So there's not nearly as many people on this route, but it does have the infrastructure to support Camino pilgrims. There are some places as I go along, from what I understand, that it's a little trickier with accommodation, but there are accommodations that are not directly on the route, but that will, as part of you staying there, will come and pick you up on the Camino, bring you out to their accommodation, and then bring you back to the Camino the next morning. So there is certainly the support and the accommodations. There's plenty of things about the Camino de Santiago. The Camino Inglés is becoming more and more popular because so many people are hearing about the popularity of the Camino Frances and the Camino Portuguese that they're looking for some quieter routes. So, for example, I actually kind of sometimes like to live a little bit on the edge, not when I'm planning Caminos with my clients, but when I go on by myself, which is what I'm doing now. I showed up in Ferrol yesterday without a reservation, and it was not a problem to find a place. I was not at all nervous about it. I had a few different places that I had considered that I wanted to decide where to stay, and Actually, when I arrived here, I went to lunch first, and just brought my my Camino backpack with me. When I go with clients, we send our luggage, but I actually carried my pack today just to have that experience once more. And so anyway, lunch is the big meal of the day here in Spain. And so when I got into Ferrol, it was lunchtime, and food's important to me. um, and so I went to have lunch first before I even went into a hotel. I had some delicious seafood, as I mentioned. I'm on the harbor here, on the Atlantic, for the first couple days of this Camino route before it drops down to head to Santiago de Compostela. So I got a little off track. I was talking about the different people that I had met. I've also met quite a few Spaniards, mostly coming from places like Barcelona, Extremadura, which is a province here in Spain that not too many foreigners have necessarily heard of. But basically, the Spaniards that I've met are coming to the Camino de Santiago from places in Spain that are much hotter. The weather up here is delightful right now. As it usually is on the northern coast of Spain. This is kind of a well kept secret that the heat waves that affect most of Europe pretty much hardly affect us up here in the north of Spain. So today it was cloudy in the morning, which on the Camino de Santiago is where I learned to appreciate cloudy days because they're great for walking. The sun did eventually come out. It's been about maybe 65 degrees during the day. And that's maybe up to 70, warmer, maybe if you're sitting in the sun or something. But today has been a perfect walking day. There was a little bit of rain this morning in this part of Spain. I'm in the province of Galicia, doing just a 6-day Camino. And in this province, they are known for rain. But with climate change, I was talking to a gentleman who's actually from this province, and he said, yeah, it doesn't rain here nearly as much as it used to. And the people in the town where I live here in northern Spain have said to me the same thing that the northern it's interesting too that there are different microclimates around the northern coast here. So I can have great weather in my town, and I have friends that live in a town that's maybe 45 minutes away, and it's pouring there. So anyway, if you're going to do any Camino, I always tell people be prepared for any type of weather. It's one of those things that we can't predict very well. I mean, you potentially could get rain. You might walk your entire Camino with no rain at all. So I just like to make sure that people are prepared for rain regardless. So I did have my rain jacket and my and a cover for my pack on this morning, but I quickly was able to take those off because it was kind of just a little unexpected rain, and then it was gone. So it's been a great day for walking. Today was actually a really short day. I should say really short. It was I like to ease into my Caminos. I met some people that were walking, almost 30 kilometers today, which for you Americans is about 18 miles. I am not interested in doing that. I walked just 15 kilometers today, which is not even 10 miles. It was predicted to take about 4 hours, and I knew that it would take me longer because I take my sweet old time on the Camino, not necessarily my walking pace, but that I like to stop and take pictures. I like to stop and have a snack. I like to stop sometimes and enjoy the scenery or whatever needs happening. If my body needs a break, if my body needs some food, I take breaks. So for me to do the 15 kilometers today, again about 9.3 miles, from when I left my hotel in the morning to when I got to this hotel today was 5 hours. But that also included an hour stop for lunch. As I said before, lunch is very important here in Spain. And a lot of Camino pilgrims don't know that. A lot of Camino pilgrims will walk until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and they'll get into their accommodation and they'll take a shower and do some laundry and take a nap. And then they, will come out from their hibernation there around like 5 o'clock in the evening looking for food. And that is a hard thing to find in Spain at 5 o'clock in the evening. The Spaniards, remember, eat lunch between 1:30 and 1:30 and 4. If you can get to a restaurant somewhere between 1:30 and 4, you're going to have a great meal. But then dinner, the kitchen will open at 8 o'clock, but most Spaniards are not going to show up at that hour. So when you're on Camino, I always recommend to my clients, if you can, stop and have lunch. even if you're in the town with your accommodation, go ahead and, drop your day pack and check into your room and then head back out all sweaty. It doesn't matter. Food's important, in case I haven't said that enough already. So that was a little bit about my day today. The place I stopped for lunch is a 200-year-old stone building, and had some, again, wonderful seafood. So that was pretty cool. It wasn't exactly on the Camino. I knew that because today's Monday. That's also another problem, is that it's Monday. A lot of the restaurants are closed. So I had done some research to find out which restaurants would be open today, and so I went off Camino, not too far. Maybe it was a 3 minutes off the official Camino route, to go to a restaurant and have some lunch today. Um, so let me just go over, just taking a quick look at my notes here. One of the other things to let you know about, so yesterday when I arrived, I did not have my Camino credential. Your Camino credential is kind of like your Camino passport, and you get it stamped in various places along the route. And when you get to Santiago, if you want your official Compostela, which is like your certificate that says you did the Camino, you have to show that you got two stamps every day. It is not hard to do. Every bar, restaurant, church, hotel, man on the side of the street selling souvenirs, everyone has stamps. So it's not that hard to do, but you do need to have a credential. And so plenty of pilgrim organizations in various countries around the world, you can, for usually for a donation, you can get your credential before you come to Spain. However, you don't have to have one before you come, because you can get one pretty much in most of the popular, all of the popular starting points for sure. So I just got to Ferrol, and I went. There's actually a tourism office here that is specifically for pilgrims. And I got here in the afternoon. She wasn't open till 6 p.m. And so I went in between 6 and 8, and she gave us our credential. She gave us our first stamp. She gave, if you wanted an actual kind of map with some information about the route. A lot of people are using apps these days. I'm kind of one of those old school folks that I still like to see everything on a big piece of paper spread out ahead of me. And so I got that from her as well yesterday. And then today I got stamps in the place where I had breakfast. I got a stamp from the place I had lunch. I stopped at another one and chatted with the owner of this bar and got a stamp there. And I should also point out that if you think I'm mentioning, I don't know if I've mentioned it a lot this conversation or not yet, but in the coming days, there's a lot of stopping at bars on the Camino de Santiago. And for those of you that are not aware of Spanish culture, the bar here is not just for drinking alcohol. It is where we get coffee in the morning. It's where I get my tostada and tomatoes for breakfast. It's where I can get a snack. I can get a sandwich. In some bars, not all of them. If I have any questions, I go to a bar. If I'm walking through town and I want to know anything, usually I'll just, I'll find a bar that's open and ask. And so the bar culture here is also, they often go into the evenings. You'll see Spaniards. My husband and I, when we first moved here, we joked that we only saw Spaniards drinking. We never saw Spaniards eating. But the other thing is, when I say drinking, they're not drinking to get drunk. They're drinking to socialize. So it is not a culture of drinking to get drunk. They do have, I read, the highest per capita like alcohol consumption, but their alcoholism rates are very, very low. And that's, again, because it's a different mentality here. People will nurse their drinks for a long time. You're just having a drink to socialize. And for those of you with concerns about alcohol, if that's something, there are other beverages available. Non-alcoholic beer is also very popular here. 0.0 they call it. I'm sure there's a more official name, but when I want to, I just say, una cerveza 0.0. And that's the non-alcoholic beer here. So you don't have to, be part of an alcohol culture or you don't have to have a glass of wine. I usually don't drink on the Camino until the evening, because it makes me tired and I go to sleep. So it's not good for me to have a glass of anything while I'm walking. So what else can I tell you about today? I'm just looking at my notes. Today's route, again, for those of you that joined late, I'm on the Camino Inglés. So I am mostly it was mostly along the water, but first we went by all of the naval buildings for the Spanish Navy. So that was pretty cool to see. Most of them are much more heavily guarded than the ship that I was on yesterday. Um, and other than that, oh, I had two other people I want to tell you about meeting. I met an Italian man who was there, who's doing the Camino with his daughter and son. The daughter somewhere maybe around 15, the son probably like 9 or 10. So it's not just that's one of the things I love about the Camino. It is not just a certain demographic that walks the Camino. I have today met retired folks, I've met families, I've met people my age, I've met young people in their 20s and 30s, and I think I've met maybe a dozen pilgrims today. So it's not like I've been seeing hundreds, but just in that small number of pilgrims that I've been meeting, there's such variety. Some people, this is their first Camino. I met a guy today, it's like his 10th. For those of you that have been following me for a while, I think this is like my 12th Camino or something like that. Um, and so it's been a really nice mix. I've met some people that came to do the Camino on their own. I've met other people that are obviously traveling with other people. So it's really been a great environment. And then also other things that I just love about the Camino, I will stop and talk to people. I am an introvert at heart, but I do enjoy one-on-one conversations. And so as I was coming down the path to my hotel, there was a guy who was literally he had a stick and he was hitting a tree and fruit was dropping down. And I, of course, asked him what that was. And they're little tiny plums. And so he said, "Oh, come on over." And he whacked the tree a few times and told me to collect some plums. And I grabbed a few. He said, "Oh, I have a whole bucket. Take more, take more." And so I took some more plums and chatted with him. He's actually from Ecuador and Venezuela. He said his ancestry is. He's only been in this country for 6 years. So for those of you that don't know, there is a program by which folks from countries that Spain colonized can come to Spain and get their Spain citizenship a whole lot easier. And so there are, as I said before, plenty of Argentinians, but I've also met just in my life living here, plenty of folks from Colombia, from Venezuela as well. Cuban folks as well coming over. So it's not just Spain Spanish that folks that you have here, but you have Hispanohablantes, as we say, or Spanish speakers from a variety of countries here. One of the things that people sometimes get concerned about is the language barrier potentially on the Camino. I speak Spanish, so these quieter routes don't phase me much. But the other thing to recognize is that the Spaniards are delightful people. They're not the kind of folks. And I say that obviously I haven't met every Spaniard. I don't want to generalize, but if you're walking the Camino de Santiago, I've had people that have said, "Oh, the guy didn't seem, like he wanted to talk to me or whatever." And you have to realize that in some of these, especially on these busier Caminos, on the Camino Frances, on the Camino Portuguese, by the time we're here in late July, they've been open probably since April. And on those routes, they've been seeing hundreds of pilgrims per day in their bar, restaurant, whatever. So some of you may have read, I did a post a while back about stopping in the second bar, not the first bar, when you get into a town, because the first one normally is overrun and the second bar usually doesn't get as much business. And so you can have these nice conversations and with the locals. And so I've had some great experiences with that. But anyway, my point is that you have to recognize that if you don't speak Spanish, do not expect that anyone here speaks English. Obviously, some people do, for sure. But I never want someone to come on the Camino de Santiago and expect that every place they go, because it's the Camino, people are going to know English. It's not a guarantee. So it's always very helpful to have at least some phrases down, which actually I didn't even mean this, but that's a nice segue into next week. My guest on my regular Wednesday live Camino Conversations is a woman who teaches specifically Spanish for people doing the Camino de Santiago, which I think is amazing. So I would say if you're going to do a route like the Inglés, you will meet people. I met obviously the girl from Canada. There are certainly people who can speak English. But just be aware that you're going to run into fewer English speakers potentially on some of these quieter routes. But for me, I think that's also part of the charm and part of the wonder of the Camino is trying to communicate as best you can with the locals, no matter, and it's amazing before I knew Spanish, how delightful people were helping me when we literally, beyond hola or, you know, um, donde está el Camino de Santiago? Where's the Camino? We didn't have any other words in common. And I had people that, I was like 10 minutes off the route in a big city and they walked me back. And so, anyway, so that's pretty much what I have for this first day on the Camino de Santiago. And for any of you, if you have any questions, by all means, as I'm doing these lives over the course of this week, feel free to come with your questions or type them in or anything like that. As I've said, I will be doing a live. I'll do my next one tomorrow at the same time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time in the US, 7 p.m. Spanish time, 6 p.m. in Britain. And I guess you guys can hopefully figure out your time zones otherwise. So if no one has any questions, that's my report for today from day one of the Camino de Santiago, the Camino Inglés route. And I will see you guys tomorrow for day two. All right. Bye-bye.